Saudi Arabia. So welcome to all those that are going to experience this webinar from around the world. And I'm Katrena Friel, and I'm coming in from Sydney, Australia. And it's very late at night here, so I can't wait to get through, deliver this webinar to you based on my book from Refresh Your Career. I'm going to take you through the 7 steps to refreshing leadership success, and we're going to look at it from a leadership management perspective. So we're going to start with step 1. The first thing I wanted to talk about was the concept of eye of the owner. Now, what we think about when we think about eye of the owner is we look at the staff and see how engaged they are in the business. And those that are very proactive in their role, they show a lot of initiative, show a lot of passion and enthusiasm for their role, tend to have a very high level of eye of the owner. Now, at the opposite end of the scale, there is what we call the fat cat mentality. And I've put up a funny picture there just to sort of demonstrate the fat cat mentality. This is people at the opposite end of the scale that aren't proactive, don't show any initiative, quite disengaged in their role and in the business itself. And so what we want to do is, from a leadership perspective, look around, starting with ourselves, and see where are we being the eye of the owner in our role? How are we being the CEO of our role, the current guardian of our role? And how much responsibility do we take in our role? And so first we look at ourselves as the leader, and then look around at your team and see where does each person sit on a scale of, say, 1 to 10. Anything above 5 is into eye of the owner. So you might have staff that are sitting around a 6 or a 7. You might have staff that are sitting around 8s or 9s. And then you'll have the very high-performing, self-managing type of people that are 9.5 out of 10, eye of the owner. Are under 5, so 5 and down, you'll have people that are 4 and 5 in the fat cat mentality, disengaged in the business, and other people you might have 3, 2, some might even be a 1 out of 10. Now, these people are what I consider to be pretty much dead wood in the organisation. They're not adding any value. I consider them stealing their money, their wages at the end of every week, and stealing because stealing implies that when you take something that's not yours, that you haven't earned, you often, of course, you haven't added any value. Whereas eye of the owner people, anyone that's a 7, an 8 or a 9, even a 9.5 out of 10, they're often adding a huge amount of value to the organisation. So they tend to give way more value than they actually receive in wages. So that's the first concept, to really have a think about what is your team doing, where are they mapped on this scale, and start to have some conversations around what you could do or what they could do to lift their point score up 1 or 2 marks. So if somebody is a 6, what do they need from you as the leader, and what do they need to see in their role to make them a 7 or an 8? And if they're already an 8, what would it take for them to be a 9? Have a conversation around that. And you'll probably find that most people will improve their score usually through training. A lot of organisations now use coaching, so all leaders should really be trained in coaching and be able to coach their team on a day-to-day basis to their next level of performance. So I just find my recommendation quite simply to lift people is training and coaching. Another one might be mentoring, and the list goes on as to how to engage staff. But my view always is you should be talking to your staff, and the more attention you pay, the more motivated they are to stay in the sphere of eye of the owner. Whereas if you just leave them to perform and you don't pay them any attention, there's no acknowledgement, there's no nobody's noticing anything, then they tend to slide down the scale quite quickly. And the really good ones leave the organisation because they've got options, whereas the problem lies that the fat cats stay there because they have nowhere else to go, because they're not employable anywhere else. So it's a really interesting conversation, and I coach around executives around this principle all the time, and everyone likes to talk about engagement. Well, this is the way I personally talk about engagement, and I look at who's engaged, who's not, and we have some chats with the team around what it would take to lift people's scores. About 10% of your organisation will be up around sort of 8 to 9.5, and the other 10% of the organisation at the other end will be fat cat mentality, and everyone else will just sit in that bell curve in the middle of that sliding scale. So have a little look. That's what I would suggest, and just think about this concept and see, where do people sit, where does your team sit, and most importantly, where do you sit personally. Let's move on now to the step 2. The one thing that one of the things that the owner people do really well is they really live their life by this particular principle, which is called Locus of Control. It's one of my personal favourites. It's my philosophy on life. It's the way I check in with everything that's going on around me. First of all, you have a think about what you can control. And if we were to put in brackets next to control, the only thing that you can really control is self. So focusing in on your own self-awareness, your own communication skills, your own attitudes to things, they're the things that you can control. Whereas with influence, you can influence others, but you can't control them. Only they have control over their attitudes and beliefs and motivations, etc. So what we want to do is expand those two areas. We want to expand how much we can control of ourselves, and we want to be able to really expand how good we are at influencing others, up line in the organisation, down line in the organisation, and also across your peers. You want to be able to influence up, down, sideways, and really have a look at influencing now as the major skill in organisations around the globe. So we don't maybe call things advanced communication skills in training anymore. We call it influencing skills. We don't say come to sales training anymore. We say come to influencing skills training. Everything's around influencing up, down, sideways, internally of your organisation as well as externally of your organisation. And a lot of money is put into the sales team, obviously, but where I see organisations lacking is that they don't put enough training and coaching into influencing people that aren't in the sales team, because we all need to influence really well. And then the third thing is focusing on what we can't control. So having a look around at what I call the whinge culture, people that are whinging about stuff that they have no control over. And I really want to reduce that for people. So when I go into organisations, I tend to be able to give people back about 30 to 40% of their energy in a year just by teaching this principle alone and getting them to refocus where they're currently focusing on stuff they can't control, and get them to shift that energy into things that they can control and influence, and really stop worrying about stuff they have no control over. Things like the server, the internet, the software inside the organisations that's utilised. Perhaps in organisations, staff have no control over the processes or the systems. So there's no point in people whinging about these things if they're not on the committee to change them. So I love this principle because it really gets people refocused on stuff they can control and influence, and really reduce their energy that they're spending on things that they have no control over, like weather and traffic is a great example. So locus of control is a big one, and I think those that are very high, I are the owners, tend to really know this principle and run this programming constantly. And that's really why they're so successful. It's because they really know where to focus their energies, and it's certainly not on things that they can't control or influence. So step 3, we start to look at your personal power as a leader. And so I've got this picture here just to demonstrate how much do you radiate, how much heat do you have radiating in your role and in the organization itself. And as a leader, we like to work with your personal power to make sure that you're able to influence and you've got great communication skills. So all these things play into how much personal power you have access to. Now, really charismatic people, people that you really enjoy being around, those people tend to have a lot of personal power, whereas those that have no personal power tend not to be noticed, you tend not to promote them, you tend not to think about them. They're just not generating enough heat for anyone to notice them. So when I'm working with executives around their personal and professional development, this concept is really discussed, and we really sort of look at where they are now with their sort of personal power and having a look at a couple of things around how comfortable they are in their own body, how comfortable they are speaking up and speaking out at meetings. All these sort of are indicators of good personal power if they can hold their own in a meeting. This is nothing to do with authority or power that is given in a formal way. What this is about is personal power. Personal power doesn't really often require a lot of formal power, like a title, and it certainly doesn't necessarily need to have a lot of authority, formal authority. These people who are high in personal power just get about their business, and they're able to exercise a lot of influence up, down and sideways within an organisation quite easily. It's because it's natural for them, and they speak up in meetings and they get heard and they radiate a lot of heat. So have a think about where you're at with your personal power and see if that's perhaps an area that you need to work on, and then have a look around at your team members and see who is not shining, who are you not noticing, and maybe they need some coaching or encouragement to bring them out of their shell, perhaps giving them sort of permission to speak up and speak out at meetings. The more they do that, the more they grow, and the more they're able to do it. It just may not have been encouraged over their career. So you as their manager or as their leader, wouldn't it be wonderful if you were able to impact your team and those team members that need your help and support around this particular matter? And you get the added benefit of them performing better, doing more, being heard, and really listening to what they have to say, because they may have a lot of good stuff to say. They just didn't have the personal power to deliver it until you came along and helped them. Okay, so the next step is to have a little look at emotional intelligence. Now, emotional intelligence is only one of 9 intelligences that we all have. Everyone has certain strengths and weaknesses in all the different 9. But in business today, emotional intelligence has been on every MBA program around the world for the last 20 years. It's really talked about a lot. The original book, about 30 years it came out, Emotional Intelligence, and I think now Emotional Intelligence 2.0 is out. So I really strongly recommend, if you haven't read it, please go and read it. But I'll just give you a quick short snapshot of what it is. Up the top you can see it's 2 things. One is know thyself, so really knowing who you are, what your triggers are. That's 50% of emotional intelligence, and the other 50% of emotional intelligence is you would then know your impact on others if you were very self-aware. The problem is most managers and leaders out there in the world, not many of them have good self-awareness, and they don't understand the impact they're having on their staff day in and day out. It's amazing what I hear back from staff all around the country. So after you've had a look at those two things, what emotional intelligence really looks at in more detail is then these 5 other areas. So the first one is, of course, you look at your self-awareness. You then look at your ability to self-regulate, your moods, your communication style, how you perform, etc. Third one you look at is your motivation, your level of motivation, how much motivation have you got access to, and then empathy. Empathy, of course, is being able to step into the shoes of other people and imagine how they feel. And then the third thing is social skills. Some people are very good socially and they tend to do very well in the world because they've got that as a superpower. Their social skills gets them indoors, they build relationships, and it's amazing. So emotional intelligence is only one of 9 intelligences, but emotional intelligence is the main one that businesses are interested in. They hire CEOs based on their level of emotional intelligence. People should get promoted because of their emotional intelligence and not promoted if they haven't worked on that aspect of who they are. If you're interested, you're more than welcome to email me and I will send you a free emotional intelligence quiz, just so that you can have a little check-in with yourself around what's involved in those 5 key areas and have a little look at where you might be going really well and where we can make some suggestions to work on. So emotional intelligence is amazingly important in success within leadership. Moving on now to step 5, we then look at levels of initiative. So I've got this picture up because I think of initiative as the fire in your belly. And again, this goes back to eye of the owners. Eye of the owner people often have a very good fire in their belly about their role. They are very excited about doing stuff and they have a lot of initiative to get stuff done. So I look across teams and see who's indicating a high level of initiative, a lot of get up and go, make it happen type energy. And there's a whole bunch of people in your team probably with very low initiative, people that have literally stopped thinking. They've switched off their thinking and they're just doing their job, probably very badly, and just trying to get through the day, but they're switched off. And switched off staff are no good because they won't make suggestions. They're not thinking about how to evolve their role, what would improve their role, and so they just sit there and they just offer up nothing. Whereas people with a lot of initiative tend to have a lot to say about how to improve things. And hopefully you as the leader, you as the manager are able to listen to what is happening on your front line and really listen to these people with high initiative and encourage them to come to you with ideas, suggestions for continuous improvement. I mean, who doesn't want that? I just know in some cultures that may not be encouraged. So you'll know that in modern management practices, we as leaders do listen now, and we do want staff to be thinking about how to continuously improve their role, their team, and of course that would impact the organisation overall. So initiative's a key point. Step number 6, we look at confidence, and a lot of people talk about confidence and having it or not having it, but what I like to do is break it down into these 3 key areas. If these 3 things are in balance, then you will have confidence on that particular issue. So as a coach, I would say to somebody, so do you believe you can? You know, do you have some self-belief that you could learn this task or learn this new job or be good in this new position? And they might say yes or no. And then depending on what they say there, I'll move into the second phase and say, well, what self-value does that give you? Does it give you, you know, is it adding value to your career? Is it adding value to your life? is it adding value to you some way? And if it's not, then you'll find that they'll, you know, I can either coach them to see the self-value for themselves, but if not, then they'll never be confident on that issue. Because if you don't believe you can, and you don't believe it adds value, then really, why would you ever do the third thing, which is practice? And to get self-assured at something, you have to stick with it long enough to get good at it. And so when you don't feel confident about something, then always have a check-in with these three things. Do you believe you can? Do you believe it adds value? And do you think you'll stick with it long enough to get good? And if those three things are yes, 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 then it's very, very likely that you'll get confident quite quickly on that particular issue. But if it's no, 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 then it's very unlikely you'll ever be confident to go for it. And so as a coach, that's my job. My job is to unpack this and find out where the issue is. A lot of the time when I'm working with clients, it's 2 out of the 3 that are out of balance, and I just adjust those 2 things, and then next minute, you know, they're feeling very confident to go forward and give something a go. So confidence is a really interesting area, and I find that people either describe themselves as reasonably confident people overall, and what that means is they've got good self-belief overall, they believe their current role and the business adds value to their life and their career, and they've stuck with it long enough to be good at it. And people that walk around thinking that they aren't very confident people, often because of their upbringing and their current experience, or they might be a graduate, they might not have a lot of experience in the business world, they might not lack any self-belief, but they may not lack any, they may understand the value that the role could give them, but they just haven't stuck with it long enough to get good at it. So that's the only one that I tend to focus on with them, just saying, you know, stick with it, be gentle with yourself as you learn. And we all were there at some point feeling a bit unsure. Whenever you start a new job, you know, you might have 2 out of 3 things out of balance, and it won't take much to get you confident again, like where you were when you were in your old job. So confidence is a real great one to understand, particularly when you're talking with your team, because your team may not come out and say to you, I'm just not confident. You need to use your intuition and your gut instincts about these things, and use this as a coaching tool, and just say to them, look, do you believe you can do the new role? Do you believe it adds value to your role? And perhaps give them some food for thought around that. And then say to them, you know, if you just get started and you just get going and give things a bit of a try, you tend to end up getting self-assured, which then leads to confidence. So anyway, confidence is something that every leader should be able to talk about, and hopefully this particular model that I've created for you helps you have that conversation in a little bit more depth, rather than just talking about confidence in general. The final step that I like to talk to leaders about is people think they have to be somebody that they're not, or they have to emulate somebody like their CEO or their old manager or whatever. But actually today what we're looking for is, and what staff are looking for, is people that are willing to act human. They want you to be yourself. They want you to be real. They want you to be authentic. And you've got to be true to yourself. If the role or the organization or the industry you're in doesn't feel right for you, then you're probably having to put on a mask to get through your day. Now, what that does when you're not yourself and you can't be yourself, what it's doing is it's draining your energy, and by the end of the week, you are absolutely exhausted because you've had to put on a face that is not your own. And so from a leadership perspective, I really love to coach leaders around how they can become more authentic leaders and create their own authentic leadership style and what's right for them. And then on the other half of this is we look at our staff and we see, are they able to be themselves? Is being you encouraged, or does everyone have to walk around and pretend they are this or that? Just have a look at what kind of culture you're creating in your team, and look around at what culture we have in the organisation itself. Some cultures, it's absolutely imperative to be yourself. It is encouraged, it's supported, it's celebrated how cool and quirky and diverse everybody is. Whereas in other organisations I go into, it is not celebrated. And what I find is very, very unhappy people, because they have to pretend to be something that they're not. And the opposite of being human is actually to be machine-like. And so when I look around and I see a lot of perfectionism disease going on, people trying to pretend something can ever be perfect, what I find is they're very insecure and scared, and they're trying to be machine-like. Now, when a leader or anybody is being machine-like and pretending they want to be perfect, then what I find is very unhappy people around them, because there is no such thing as perfection. Nobody wants to work for a machine. Everybody wants to work with human beings, and human beings do make mistakes, and there's no such thing as perfection. There is only continuous improvement, and the more you're able to be yourself, the less energy you need to have, and the less energy that you waste in a week. Because I want leaders to have headspace to communicate and to listen to their staff. And if you're too busy pretending to be a machine, then you haven't got time to be in touch with your staff. So just visualize for me one end of the scale being machine-like, and you'll see down there perfectionism and all of this other stuff, and it's very uncomfortable, and don't make a mistake, don't dare, it's too scary, your head will be chopped off. And then up the other end, you've got all these, in other organisations, you've got people that are just being themselves, they're getting on with it, they can relax, and they might make a mistake, but they'll know where to go when that happens. And, they won't be punished. It's just an opportunity to learn and grow. So that's the 7 principles. And what I offer everybody who listens to the webinar is an opportunity to, again, contact me for a free leadership coaching session. And that way you and I can sit down and talk about perhaps these 7 principles. Which ones did you want to discuss? And, what can I do to help you be an even better leader or manager within your team, within your organisation? And if anybody is a staff member and wants to have a free coaching session, they're more than welcome as well to talk about what will take their career to that next level. So that's on offer for everybody, and you'll find my email and website details here, but also you'll see them inside this particular website on social media. So you'll be able to contact me somehow. But it's Katrena with an E, Katrena at Katrena, Katrena.com.au. And I'm in Sydney, Australia. So put a 61 in front of that if you want to call. Drop the 0412537053. But all that will be available. I look forward to connecting with you all on LinkedIn. And thank you very much for your time today. Now we have some questions, I believe.
Thank you very much for such an intriguing presentation, folks. We are now open for the question answer. If you have any questions, you can either put in the question box given in the end of the webinar console, or equally you could raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon available on the webinar console. Besides this, folks, as Katrina said, that you can contact Katrina for a free leadership coaching session at the given email address, that is katrina@katrina.com.au. So let me go straight to the question box. We have a question for you, Katrina. There is, how can top management be the driving force for change?
Well, that's a huge question. I think the first thing they need, if they're that interested in change, which they should be, because everybody wants to transition from the old style of management to the new style of management. The new style of management is all around being more open, more collaborative, more training opportunities for people, less leadership from top down, more leadership from bottom up, and getting staff involved. Everyone knows that the value is at the front line. People are out there doing it. They have the best ideas. They have the best improvement suggestions. And so my suggestion for improving change and getting people really comfortable with change is to get down into the trenches and talk to your staff and really start to listen and use training and development as your main source of the ability to change people. So my focus is always on the individual. I never look at the entire organization and say, hey, let's do a change management process. It will, when you think about it, that whole organization is made up of people. If we went and gave all people in the organization better training and development to improve their self-awareness, their leadership skills, their management skills, their communication skills, their influencing skills, if we gave every individual that opportunity to learn and grow, then automatically the organization would explode with amazing performance. But because we don't do that, then everyone's scared of change, they don't understand, they've got no self-awareness around it. It just ends up being a fear-based organization rather than a learning-based organization. Does that help you?
Thank you, Katrina, for a brief answer. We have another one, that is, how will we know if we are on the track to achieve our goal?
Well, it depends what goal it is, but if you're on track to achieving your goals, you'd probably be looking at the goal for the year. And when I'm working with clients on their strategic plans and their business plans, we've laid down a whole bunch of goals. So there they are for the year, but they mean nothing. What you have to do is look at how does that translate quarterly. So then we look at those goals and how they break down quarterly. Then we say that still doesn't mean anything. How does that break down month to month? So then you look across the month at how that all breaks down. And then you can break it down weekly. So now the staff who are running things day to day can see their role in the week to week. And then they can take those weekly goals and break them down into daily goals. And now you have your to-do list, your action plan. I wake up in the morning, I look at my to-do list and say, there's the things I need to be doing today. But what happens in organizations is we create these big strategic plans with these big nebulous goals, and we never say to the staff, what do you want them to do differently day to day? They don't know, and they don't know how they play into those bigger goals. So what I teach organizations is to really break them down from annual to quarterly to monthly to weekly to then daily, and then the staff can look at that and say, I understand that if I achieve this today, and then if I achieve that Monday through to Friday or whenever you work, you know, your 5 days a week thing, then I know if I do that, it automatically would mean we would achieve our yearly goal, because everyone's just doing their day to day, their week to week, and it all plays in up line from that. And the daily goals go into the weekly goals go into the monthly goals all get formulated into the quarterly goals, and boom, boom, we are on budget. We are on track to create that goal, whether that's a project or a financial goal. So I hope that helps you. But again, that question is a very, very big question, and it depends what goal you're talking about. But that's my general response to that.
Katrena, thanks a lot. We have another one, that is how to build good working relationship.
Good working relationships. If we were all working on our emotional intelligence, I would start there. So we talked about that today, about emotional intelligence. I think if we're going to build good relationships, it all starts with our emotional intelligence. People with low emotional intelligence tend not to be able to build good, strong relationships at work or outside of work. So these are the 5 things that allow you to build really great relationships, and that is self-awareness, being self-regulated, having good motivation, good empathy skills, and social skills. The last 2 are the secret to really great relationships, great empathy and terrific social skills. And we can all work on these things. The research indicates that emotional intelligence can be built, and you'll see really great results if you really study it and start to look at yourself. And as I said before, please contact me to get the free quiz. I have this lovely quiz that I've used for many, many years in my corporate work with executives on emotional intelligence. So please just send me an email and I'll send that straight off to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Katrena, for being with us here. And before we end the webinar, Katrena, do you have any concluding remarks?
No, I don't. Thank you so much for having me and giving me this time. I really do consider it a great honor to speak with you and to take an hour out of your life where you've listened to another point of view. And I really, really, my objective is always to add as much value as I possibly can within an hour. So I hope you have maybe 1 or 2 things that you've been able to take away, and make sure that this time that we've spent together has been very, very valuable for you. So thank you. I'm honored to be here.
I really want to thank you, Katrena, on behalf of Gulf Business Network Training Center, for sharing the valuable information. Thank you all of those who participated in this webinar. We are recording this webinar, so stay tuned to www.gbntc.com/webinars to access the recording version of webinar or to download the soft copy presentation. You can also check out our upcoming programs and webinars on our website. With this, I would be dismissing you all from this webinar. Thank you. Allah Hafiz.